So who would you say you were growing up?
That's a hard question.
I mean, it is. It's very open ended.
If you're asking from a cultural background or just like a self-identification
I
background,
mean, it
or
could be both. I feel like both kind of go hand in hand. You don't have to say, state who you are to the world. Like, give us some intel. Who were you growing up?
I feel like I was always someone who didn't necessarily fit in, but always tried my best to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like at a young age, I had to grow up very fast, so my mindset was a lot different from the kids growing up. So that just means like the stuff that they would talk about, I would enjoy like kid things, but whenever it came down to like deeper topics or stuff that kids usually don't talk about,
Yeah.
that's where I felt pretty isolated because it was
So,
hard to talk to kids about that
where
kind of
did
stuff.
you feel that way? Like, what in middle school were you feeling that way? High school, or were you in elementary school, like speaking philosophy?
I mean, I have a very specific memory when I was 7 years old. I was laying down in bed, right? And I was just all of a sudden I was like, so if God created the universe or the world and everything around us, who created God?
Oh,
Right? And I'm like 7 years old. Like I'm not understanding why I'm having these thoughts, right? And as a kid, you don't have a good concept of religion or just like foundational structure greater than yourself, right? You only
hmm
know what you're grown up with, like your parents or just your environment, right? Nothing like outer worldly. So yeah, I think that's how I kind of felt growing up.
yeah.
And so there are many times where I just put that side of me to the side so I could fit in with other kids. Maybe if that's like liking sports, cartoon shows, or whatever, kids did then.
What sort of interest did you have in that sort of time frame then? I mean, anime obviously would be
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
but was that one that was you were in that interest because other people were, or was that actually something you were interested in?
It was just almost like self-acknowledgement. I don't know where it came from, but
Hmm.
I still did enjoy things that
Okay.
kids do, I used to go to Usa's house all the time, and
Hmm.
I used to bring my GameCube, my Wii, we'd play Mario Party,
Yeah,
and
just
so
chilling out, being a kid.
right. So it's not like I didn't like get to experience my childhood. It's more so I had
Hmm.
a part of my childhood that didn't get experienced, if that makes sense, until
Gotcha.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
How does that compare to who you are now?
I think now I obviously have a lot more knowledge and experience than I did as a kid, and I have a lot more self-awareness. I think back then I used to seek trying to be understood. Now I understand that it's okay if I'm not understood.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's really deep. Yeah. Um, how do you feel about that, Usa? Did you have a similar kind of thinking, or were you just one of the kids not really thinking of something deeper?
Um, I don't know. Kind of like Cody. Um, I felt like for some reason, even though I'm the youngest in my family, I still felt like I had to grow up a little fast, and I was honestly never too interested with playing with other kids. Um, but other than that, I mean,
I mean, not even from like a personal background, but like cultural background, right?
yeah,
Growing up Asian, right?
Mm,
Our families didn't understand the concept of us hanging out with other kids outside of school.
really?
Really.
That I
So
didn't know that would be a thing.
so from American culture to Asian culture, I'd be like, "Hey, can I go over to my friend's house?" And they'd be like, "No, no, you can't go over there." And I didn't understand why. I thought it's because my parents like just not hated me, but they just didn't allow me
Yeah,
to go do
yeah.
things. But it was more so because there's a big cultural barrier, and I think a lot of Asian parents growing up felt like if something happened to their kid or our
Hmm.
kid, then they would get like punished for it,
Yeah.
because of the lack of language or cultural knowledge. It's not something that's shared.
So is that just kind of something that just is like you wouldn't go over to another kid's house, or was there a reason for it? Like, is there a reason for that kind of cultural thing, or was it just you wouldn't go over to play at someone's house?
I think
What?
there is like a sense of safety for your child, right? You don't know
Okay.
who the parents are, So I wouldn't willingly just let my kid go over to some random person's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though my kid knows their kid, because you also have to think about how responsible are the parents, right? Because you're giving your kid to them, and now it's their responsibility.
Yeah.
And so, like growing up, like whenever friends would ask, "Hey, can you come up to my birthday party?" or like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, you want to hang out?" I'd be like, "I can't." And they thought it was because I didn't like them or I didn't want to
Yeah.
hang out with them, but it's
You
because I
just
really
denied it.
couldn't.
Yeah.
You know, I think Usa and I both share similar childhoods where our parents are always working,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's usually no supervision. But there's also a lack of this emotional presence, right? So it's easy for Usa and I to relate, and we live so close that we could just walk to each other's houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you think that kind of shaped you? That absence of your parents, they were like working all the time, and that kind of those barriers where to you maybe going over to someone's house is whatever, but to your parents that's not a thing. How do you think that kind of shaped your childhood and also you now and how you approach things?
If I were to think about it back then, I would think it didn't allow me to socialize as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I ever have any social issues now, I would think that would be the reason why. But given that they were working, I wouldn't blame them for it because, they're trying to make a living and they're trying to raise me. So now I just take it upon myself to try to go out and do things that I couldn't do before and
Mm.
not use that against them. Sense.
Yeah. What sort of things now do you go out and do because of that? Like you're trying to cover that area, or not cover, I should say, but explore that area that you haven't before. So what sort of stuff do you do now?
I mean, obviously, like hanging out with friends or like going
Mm.
out, trying new restaurants, exploring new places, taking pictures, and just doing things by myself. I think before we felt like we had to. Now I kind of want to. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you kind of keep some of that too?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you're always like F people.
It's just really hard to, put what I feel into words, but Cody just does it so well. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I don't know how else to put it.